that technology wasn't entirely a blessing. Anyway, that's a whole long story, but
100 years since.
But basically, what I'm saying is, yeah, a generation ago, we believed very strongly that this way was the best way. But now we look at the planet, we look at at climate change, we look at the deterioration of the ecological basis of life. We look at unremitting poverty and violence. It's not working. And so we're losing this confidence that says, be like us. Our way is the best. Weirdly enough, when I've been, in India or South Africa, many people there believe more strongly than we do now.
Yeah.
In that story. Yeah. Yeah.
That's just reminded me when you kind of alluded to that magical world. Maybe we've all been in, and some people are still in today. Just reminded me of the night from Saturday to Sunday was celebrated as Beltane's night all around the world, and I had to join that ritual twice. It was fun, but also a bit silly, because it felt like I can't go back to that magical thing. I won't be Pan or an ancient god or a witch or whatever. I mean, that's really past, and it confuses my mind.
Yeah, I'm not talking about imitating the past or imitating indigenous cultures.
Yeah,
it's seeing the world through a different story. So, for example, on the bookshelf today, there was a book about Victor Schauberger.
Schauberger.
Yeah, he was a Austrian. I can't remember if he was German or Austrian. He was a forester, and he's Austrian. Yeah, and so he observed water very carefully for decades, and came to understand water as a living being. He didn't necessarily believe in a god of water or anything like that, but his understanding allowed him to interact with water in very practical ways that seem almost miraculous. He observed how fish, even in a strong current, can stay completely motionless but not be swept downstream. Now, how is that possible? He observed many things about water, and through the lens of seeing it as a living being, he developed all kinds of understandings that end up being very useful. Based on those understandings, he developed certain practices. Here's how you interact with water. You shield it from the sun, for example. Those practices constitute a kind of a ritual. I'm reminded of a book by, what's her name? Frederique Marglin, something like that. She's an academic from South America. Her book, amazing book called Subversive Spiritualities. And she describes an incident in, I believe it was Peru. She was trained as an agronomist. So the agronomists go in and they tell the peasant farmers, you should start farming more scientifically, and we'll tell you how. You should cut down those trees and plant this kind of tree. And the peasant farmer said, no, because our trees, they have a soul in them that communicates with the soul of the underground river. And the agronomists say that's superstitious nonsense. Plant this kind of tree. And so they do. They cut down the trees, and they're forced to plant these other trees. And it turns out those trees are totally unsuitable for the microclimate, and they're drawing too much water, and underground rivers are disappearing. And the agronomists say, well, that's not because they have a shared soul, that's because this hydrological process is happening. They always have their own story for why it's happening, even though everything that the indigenous peasants were saying was right. And they said, your irrigation ditches, you're losing water to seepage. You should make concrete ditches. And they said, no, that won't work because the plants are inviting the water to go farther, and without the invitation from the plants who are above them and encouraging, maybe the plants are encouraging the water and saying, yes, you can do it, water. They said if you build concrete pipes, then the water will have no encouragement anymore. And the agronomists say water doesn't have ears, there's no encouragement happening, it's a fluid. You don't understand chemistry, but it's just hydrogen dioxide, or whatever, dihydrogen oxide. And it's, and so they build the concrete irrigation channels, and then it turns out the water only goes half as far as it did before. Why? The agronomists say, well, we made a mistake. The reason why that's happening is that the plants aren't growing and the water is evaporating faster in the sun. It has nothing to do with encouraging the water. Anyway, that kind of arrogance, it's not something we can fix by learning from technical errors. As long as we hold on to the worldview that denies beingness to the world, we will continue to commit errors forever. That's what the climate change crisis is actually asking us to do. It's not asking us to be more clever in our disposition of resources. It's essentially an initiation of our culture into realizing that what we do to the world, we do to ourselves. Inescapably. The harm that we do will come back to us. And I think that the real cause of climate change is only in part CO2. But it's everything that we do in disrespect.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. When you told that story about the forest, there was this, the unmeasurable aliveness of things.
Yeah.
That's the people still connected to. And of course, they themselves are alive and they feel connected to the aliveness of the soil and the trees and the water. And in comes a kind of poetic quality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the beauty you're referring to in that title. The more beautiful world is possible. It's not an aesthetic quantity or something like that.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
more something that's about the aliveness of things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you can really only genuinely love something that has aliveness.
Like, if you look outside this building here,
Yeah.
if we do that to our planet Earth, beauty suffers, right?
Right.
And that reflects upon our own beauty, doesn't it? Can't avoid it.
It's interesting, the older buildings have a quality of aliveness.
Well, the sun helps right now. And this,
No, but old buildings, people
if you look out.
were not motivated by efficiency as much in the past. They did things that you cannot justify on grounds of economic efficiency or thermodynamic efficiency or biological efficiency. Same with animals. Have you ever wondered why the birds sing so much? Why do they waste all that energy singing? I mean, yeah, to attract a mate, right, and to defend territory, but once you've got your mate and you've got your territory pretty much set, you still sing all day, And isn't there a part of you that knows that they're not just singing for those utilitarian reasons, that they are taking joy in pouring out their song. They're exercising their gift, that they're nourishing the whole environment with their music. And don't you want to do that too? Our whole understanding of the basis of life is a ridiculous story. To reduce it to reproductive self-interest. or in economic thinking, financial self-interest. To say that that is the motivator, the fundamental motivator of all behavior, and that, I mean, that's a good definition of evil, right? To be wholeheartedly dedicated to your own rational self-interest. Who cares about anybody else? That's evil. If we take that as the ground of being, we're basically saying we are fundamentally evil. Therefore, to be good, you have to conquer yourself. And there's the whole thing about self-rejection and self-conquest again. The war on self, the war on nature. So, and that's just, what I'm saying is that is just a story. And we could live in another story. And when you live in another story, then what's rational changes. If your logic of the world says that what I do to my community is going to happen to me, then rational self-interest is different.
I love that term you coined also about this. There's this old story, there's the new story, and there's the space in between two stories. Most obviously, that's a transition phase. We don't know quite where we are. Old story, new story. There's a transition, maybe decades. So, but also it refers to my understanding to experiences in meditation. Like you have thinking, and again thinking.
Right.
That's the interesting space there.
Right.
And if there is something that has to emerge, that's truly new, fresh, will happen here.
Yes. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the space between stories, because like sometimes you might feel kind of pressure, you know, like, okay, you've left the old story behind. In some way, by coming to this program, those of you who are in the program here, you've left the old story behind. You've taken a big leap of faith. But, and who knows why you left it behind? For many people in my generation, it usually only happens through crisis and breakdown. You know, you had a career and it just stopped working. You had a marriage and it stopped working. Your health broke down. Something broke down. And everything that you thought was real and true and dependable and permanent and normal is revealed as just smoke, as nothing. And then you enter the space between stories. Like, wow, I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know how to live this life anymore. My instruction set, or here's how to be a man. Here's how to do man. Here's how to do woman. That instruction set is useless now. How do I do this thing called life? Who am I even? That's the space between stories. Maybe some of you younger people were never that fully in the old story, but you still might not have a new story. The new story doesn't appear right away. It'd be nice if it did, but instead we're in this empty space you're talking about where we don't have the answers, we don't know what to do, and that can last a very long time. But it's that empty space when we've let go of how we thought the world was, what we thought was real, what we thought was practical, but what we thought was the way to be a human being. When we let go of that, that's the empty space that something new can arise into. So, yeah, it can't be forced either. Oh yeah, and I would just say that it's not only individuals who go through this space between stories. Oh, what I wanted to say to you in this program, if you don't find your project right away, if you try this and try that and you just don't quite know what to do, like that's not a problem. That's not a failure. Like don't have that pressure on you that you've got to replace old success with a new success right away. What you are trying to find might be beyond the view of the place that you are standing right now. And the only way to bring it into view is to walk to some other places, to try the project, even if it's the wrong project. Because that brings you to a new place where your vision is different. So that's another piece of knowledge about the space between stories. So don't stress out if you don't see an immediate path to success. And same goes for our entire civilization, entering the space between stories, where we don't know who we are anymore. We don't know why we're here anymore. We don't know how to do this thing called civilization. We're entering that right now. And I don't think that I or any other smart guy is going to be able to see, here's how to do the future. Here's how to do humanity. Here's my smart system. Here's my mathematically perfect monetary system, and this is the answer. None of us, I believe, none of us are standing in a place where we can see that far. So that's why I really welcome these experiments, anything that is a walk into this new territory increases our understanding of the new territory, and that's how maps are built. So yeah.
Thank you, Charles. Also, just reminded me what you said. I had this vision for the next time here.
Mm-hmm.
You'll do the graduation address, right?
The graduation.
Yeah, that's the sketch we just did. So I think we're over with this phase, and there's a short break to pee and drink. We'll reunite for question and answers and your contributions. Thank you.
Thank you.